Hey YouTube, what's going on? Snowflarky Zemos here, and today I'm bringing you my Magnet Warrior Imperium Magnum Turbo deck profile. So Magnet Warriors are cards that I always thought were kind of cool growing up. When I was a kid, I got my hands on a copy of this Valkyrian the Magnum Warrior from Stairway of the Destined Duelist. Not that I had the game, but someone else had it, and I just ended up getting this card from them. And I always thought that like this magnet guy with this sword was kind of sick and was always looking for a way to play him, but not with much success as a kid. But as I got older, they came out with new Magnet Warrior support, and I didn't look into it until I had bought a collection of cards off of a friend of mine, and he had clearly had gotten 3 copies of the structure deck and just had it all. So ever since, I've added it to my casual deck pool. Very fun deck. Now, Magnet Warriors are, they're not a great competitive deck. They're all right though, and I would argue that Magnet Warriors are better if you focus more on just like a pure Magnet Warrior rank 3 strategy instead of trying to bother with Imperium Magnum. But Imperium Magnum is a sick boss monster that, if you do get him out, does have a pretty neat and powerful effect, and that just makes him fun to play. So this build is focused mainly around getting out Imperium Magnum as fast as you can, and just using his effect to be a big body, negate cards, and go from there. So with that said, let's get into the card by card. Starting off with our monsters, I am playing 3 copies of Valkyrian the Magnum Warrior. Now, of course, 3 copies of Valkyrian in a normal deck is normally something you would not see. It can be very bricky because this card in your hand is literally just dead weight, and it's hard to get on the field without the help of Delta. But Valkyrian the Magnum Warrior is one of the 2 monsters that are required to make Imperium Magnum, and you cannot use substitute monsters, so we do have to play Valkyrian. And so we're playing 3 because we really want to see it, especially since a big part of this build is getting out 2 Imperium Magnums in one turn, which isn't that hard to do. So we want to have multiple copies of it for sure. What's also nice about having multiple copies in this build is that when Imperium Magnum is destroyed, it floats into special summoning a Berserkion and Valkyrian. So if you've gotten rid of one for a material for the fusion and you still have it in your deck, well then you can just bring out Valkyrian, and it's a 3500 attack monster, which is pretty sweet. Next up, we are playing 3 copies of Berserkion, the Magna Warrior. This is the retrain big Magna Warrior boss, and this one's a pretty good monster on its own. It's also one of the requirements for Imperium Magnum, but this card is definitely usable on its own. You have to special summon it from your hand by banishing Alpha, the Electromagnet Warrior, Beta, the Electromagnet Warrior, and Gamma, the Electromagnet Warrior. Uh, and you can do that by banishing from your hand, graveyard, and or face up from your monster zones. And if you banish all 3 of those cards, of course, you get to special summon him. Then he gets the effect, you can banish 1 level 4 or lower Magnet Warrior monster from your graveyard to target 1 card your opponent controls and destroy it. So that's pretty cool. The Electromagnet Warriors, of course, do count as Magnet Warriors, so you can banish them from your graveyard to pop cards. And he's got 3000 attack, which is, pretty solid body. And of course, if this card is destroyed by battle, or if this card in its owner's possession is destroyed by an opponent's card effect, you can target 1 of your banished Alpha the Magnet Warrior, Beta the Electromagnet Warrior, and Gamma the Electromagnet Warrior, and summon them, which is pretty nice because you'll be able to get all their effects off. And of course, that gives you the material to go into another Berserkion, kind of keep looping it. That was kind of the theme of this structure deck because it came out along the ABC Buster Dragon deck, which did a similar thing, but it just did it much better than Magnet Warriors. So Magnet Warriors didn't have much love and attention paid to them. Next up, I am playing 3 copies of Alpha, the Electromagnet Warrior. Alpha got 1700 attack. Probably the most important of our Electromagnet Warriors in this build, because if this one is normal or special summon, you can add a level 8 Magna Warrior monster from your deck to your hand. So this can get us Berserkion or Valkyrian, whichever one we need for whichever reason. And of course, You can only use this effect once per turn. Now, all the electromagnet warriors have this secondary effect that says, during your opponent's turn, you contribute this card to special summon a level 4 magnet warrior monster from your deck. Now, that's a quick effect, and of course, these guys are level 3, so we can't summon out another alpha, but we do have a level 4 target in Delta that we will be summoning with this, and it just moves cards out of the decks. Get your Magnet Warriors loaded in the graveyard so that you can use them for Berserkion, etc. Next up, I am playing 3 copies of Beta, the Electromagnet Warrior. Beta just says if this card is normal or special summon, you can add a level 4 or lower Magnet Warrior monster from your deck to your hand. So you can use this one to grab Alpha, you can use this one to grab Gamma, you can use this one to grab Delta, whichever one you need, making this kind of the second most important. And of course, he has the effect that during your opponent's turn, you can tribute this card, summon your level 4 Magnet Warrior monster from the deck. Next, I'm playing only 2 copies of Gamma the Electromagnet Warrior. This one just is not as useful because his effect is not as great. If this card is normal or special summon, you can special summon a level 4 or lower Magnet Warrior monster from your hand. So that one's alright, you know, it gets it out of the hand, out of the deck, which is not as good. But, you know, you can summon it, and then you can summon Alpha, get your level 8, and gives you 2 materials to make a rank 3 XZs. There is a pretty good rank 3 that this deck can make that a lot of other decks can make, and of course rank 3s in general are good to fill your extra deck with this deck. Gamma also has the tributing it to special summon a level 4 Magnet Warrior, so you can do that as well. Our level 4 Magnet Warrior of choice is triple Delta the Magnet Warrior. Delta the Magnet Warrior is our level 4 Magnet Warrior monster. And if this card is normal or special summon, you can send a level 4 or lower Magnet Warrior monster from your deck to the graveyard. So that can help load our graveyard with a Gamma, a Beta, an Alpha, whichever one we're missing in order to play Berserkion. Normally I think you send Gamma because the others you kind of want in your hand to summon. So that's pretty sweet. And then of course this card, if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can banish 3 level 4 or lower Magnet Warrior monsters from your graveyard, except Delta, the Magnet Warrior. Special summon a Valkyrian, the Magnet Warrior, from your deck, ignoring its summoning conditions. So this is our way to get Valkyrian out onto the field without the effect of Imperion Magnum. You know, if your graveyard's already loaded up, you can banish them, just float into a 3500 attack monster, which is pretty cool. And yeah, so Delta's a great target to have in the deck. And last for our monsters, we are playing 1 copy of Sentry Soldier of Stone. This is a sweet card that seemingly was almost made for this deck. It's a level 3 rock, just like all the Electromagnet Warriors, and it has this great ability that if all monsters you control are rock-type monsters, minimum 1, while this card is in your graveyard, you can special summon this card. You can only use this effect once per turn. So if you got this guy loaded in the grave, you know, and you got Alpha, you got Beta, you got Gamma, any of the Electromagnet Warriors, you can summon Sentry Soldier of Stone, and then with the level 3, you can make a rank 3 XZ. Pretty awesome. Just a good card to have. Like I said, this build is more focused on getting out Imperion Magnums than the standard kind of rank 3 extra deck plays, but sometimes you can't always do that, so having this card handy is very good to have. And that is it for our monsters. Next, we are moving into our spell cards. I am playing 3 copies of Polymerization. Unfortunately, Magnet Warriors don't have their own nice archetype fusion spell, so Poly is the way we gotta do it. And because we want to see Imperion Magnums, I am playing 3 Poly just because I want to see this card. I want to see this card turn 1 every game, and so I'm even risking the fact that, you know, sometimes you can brick and get multiple. But, you know, you can definitely summon multiple Imperium Magnums, so not the worst, but I am playing 3 Poly. And of course, to help search our polys, I'm playing 2 copies of Fusion Sage. You can, of course, play King of the Swamp in this deck, but since you can't use substitute fusion materials to summon Imperium Magnum. The secondary effect of King of the Swamp is wasted, and so I thought this would be a fun time just to play Fusion Sage, because I think this is a sick looking card, especially this ultra rare copy. And of course, my King of the Swamps are not hollow, and I really liked that all the Magnet Warrior cards are hollow of some kind, at least for the main deck monsters. And, you know, I just didn't want to spoil that theming, so I'm playing Fusion Sage instead. Next, I'm playing 2 copies of Fusion Conscription. This is a card I'm considering bumping up to 3, but I think I only have 2 copies. But Fusion Conscription just says that I can reveal a fusion monster from your extra deck. That will, of course, be Imperium Magnum. And if I do, I can add one of the fusion materials listed in its deck from my deck or graveyard to my hand. So this means this card can get me Valkyrian or Berserkion, whichever one I need. What you do need to note, though, is that for the rest of this turn, after this effect is activated, you cannot normal summon, set, or special summon monsters with the name of the monster added. So normally you want to add Valkyrian, since you can't really special summon anyway, because if you add Berserkian, you can't special summon Berserkian on the field the turn you use it. But this gets us mainly just used to make sure we have our fusion material ready to go and summon our Imperium Magnum. Next up, I'm playing 2 copies of Magnetic Field. Pretty cool field spell that the Magnet Warrior deck has. It just says if you control a level 4 or lower Earth Rock type monster, so do note this works even with Sentry Soldier of Stone, you can target a level 4 or lower Magnet Warrior monster in your graveyard and special summon it. So that is another way to get plenty of materials out for rank 3 XZs, resummon Electromagnet Warriors that are in your grave to get their effects again. Pretty cool. And then also has this nice effect. Once per turn, at the end of the damage step, when an Earth Rock type monster you control battles an opponent's monster, but the opponent's monster was not destroyed by the battle, you can return that monster to the hand. So that's a non-targeting, non-destruction removal effect, which is pretty cool. Always pretty useful because it's just kind of harder to play around that kind of stuff. And so having that effect on this field spell as well makes this a pretty good field spell for the deck. Next, I'm playing 1 copy of Terraforming. Terraforming adds a field spell used to search magnetic field. Awesome. Next, I am playing 2 copies of Magnet Induction. This is one of the more recent cards that came out for the set, for the deck. It just says, if you control a Magnet Warrior monster whose original level is 4 or lower, you can special summon a level 4 or lower Magnet Warrior monster from your deck with a different name than the cards you control. This card is really nice in this build because we always want to see Alpha, but if we have any of the other ones and this card, then we can still get to Alpha, which is pretty sweet. So we want to be doing that to search our materials for Imperion Magnum, of course. It also has a second effect that Magnet Warrior and Magnum Warrior monsters you control cannot be destroyed by battle or your opponent's card effects for the rest of this turn that you use this. So pretty nice little secondary effect. The reason I'm running this at 2 is that we can only use 1 of these per turn, and so seeing too many of them clogs up the hand. Of course, that is kind of true with the Fusion Conscription as well, and with the amount of bricks this deck has, we kind of have to reduce that. We're going all in on trying to get double Imperium Magnum turn 1, so we want to cut bricking down as much as possible, but it's still a good card. We want to see it. And last on our spells, I am playing 3 Pot of Extravagance. Now this is kind of a suspect choice because Pot of Extravagance does risk banishing our Imperium Magnums from the extra deck, but we're going to try to counteract that by playing a full playset of them. And, you know, usually you're only activating this once before you get Imperium Magnum, your double Magnums on the field. And so that just means as long as you keep 1 or 2, your strategy is playable. Now, arguably, if you had Pot of Prosperity, probably better because you can make sure you don't banish your Imperium Magnums. And there's definitely a lot of less useful extra deck cards you would want to prioritize and get a combo piece. But I haven't been punished too hard by this card, so I'm still playing it. If you don't have Extravagance or Prosperity, you can consider playing something like Trade In to get rid of your excess Magnet Warriors, etc. But with that, that is the end of our spell lineup. Next, we're going to go through some trap cards. We are playing some trap cards in this deck, and the trap cards are how we will get our second Imperium Magnum out, and that is with the help of this card, 3 copies of Necrofusion. So Necrofusion says you can fusion summon a fusion monster from your extra deck by banishing fusion materials listed on the card from your graveyard face down. So what's pretty cool is if we can get the Valkyrian, the Poly, and the Berserkian turn 1, we can fusion summon into our Imperium Magnum, and then if we have Necrofusion to go along with it, at the start of our opponent's turn, we can Necrofusion into a second Imperium Magnum, and then we have 2 Imperium Magnums on the field, which are 2 4,000 attack monsters that can negate cards once per turn. So that's pretty sweet, and Necrofusion was definitely the reason I decided to have this version of the deck on hand. Pretty sweet, awesome card, definitely one we want to see. To make sure we see it, we are also playing 3 copies of Trap Trick. Trap Trick is pretty nice because if we banish a normal trap card from our deck, except Trap Trick, we can set a copy of the same card, and it can be activated this turn, but we can only activate 1 trap afterward. So Necrofusion here is a normal trap card, as you can see. So we can use Trap Trick, banish a Necrofusion, and set another one that we can then activate right away. That's pretty good. We're never going to resolve more than 1 of this Necrofusion usually, so we definitely don't mind if we do that, and you know, just gets the rest out of the deck, and definitely improves the consistency of seeing Necrofusion. And last up, I am playing 1 copy of Solemn Judgment. The 2 Magnums are an Omni Negate, so of course if we have Magnum and then we have Solemn Judgment, it's just another Omni Negate card, and having an extra Omni Negate on top of Omni Negates is pretty nice. It's just pretty funny. Can do a lot of damage to an opponent, especially in a casual setting, which is where I kind of play this deck. So, you know, pretty powerful. Arguably, this card should be another copy of Fusion Conscription, but for the time being, I enjoy the few moments I've been able to get both the double Magnum and a Solemn Judgment on board turn 1, and just completely say no to my opponent for the entirety of the turn. So with that, that is our main deck. Next, we're going to go into our extra deck here. So do note, as far as the extra deck, I'm only going to show you 2 extra deck monsters that I'm playing at 3 copies. In this build, I'm kind of all focused on the Imperium Magnum, so the other extra deck slots are mostly just extravagance fodder. So I don't necessarily have optimal target sleeve, but I will talk about them afterward. Definitely make sure you're playing 15 cards in your extra deck to make the most out of your extravagance or prosperity. And without further ado, let's talk about the important ones. Of course, the first one is our 3 copies of Imperion Magnum, the Superconductor Battlebot. So this is a big fusion payoff monster, 4,000 attack, requires Valkyrian and Berserkion in order to fuse it, and you have to fusion summon it with the above materials. It cannot be special summoned by other ways. What's awesome about this card is that once per turn, during either player's turn, when your opponent activates a spell, trap card, or monster effect, you can negate the activation, and if you do, destroy it. So basically an Omni Negate on anything except the summon. You know, negating spells, traps, effects, that's the key to winning Yu-Gi-Oh! And here's a big monster that does it. So that's pretty sweet. And, of course, if this face-up card in its owner's control leaves the field because of an opponent's card effect, you can special summon both a Valkyrian the Magna Warrior and Berserkian the Magna Warrior from your hand and or deck, ignoring their summoning conditions. What's pretty nice about the double combo is that it usually requires only 1 Valkyrian and 1 Berserkian, and because of our ratios, we are playing more in the deck. So if this card does get outed, we can easily float into a Berserkian and Magna Warrior, which are really big, and you know, it's already costing your opponent's outs to remove BattleBot, so being able to deal both of those is also can be tough. And of course, if they leave them on board, we have the ability to maybe fusion summon another one, which is pretty awesome. So, you know, with the ideal combo of getting these and of getting 1 fused and Necrofusion, we can end our turn we can start our opponent's turn with 2 of these on the field. So that's 2 omni negates with monsters that float. Pretty sick. And because we're playing extravagance, we're playing 3 because we want to always try our hardest to keep 2 copies, especially at least 1 of them in our deck. The next awesome payoff that this deck can run is Gorgonic Guardian, which is a rank 3 XZ that requires 2 level 3 rock type monsters. All our level 3s in this deck are rock. The Electromagnet Warriors are level 3, and so is Sentry Soldier of Stone, a card that we can constantly recur special summoning. So it's pretty easy to get Gorgonic Guardian out as well, especially if you can buy a turn with your Imperion Magnums. Once per turn, during either player's turn, you can detach a material from this card, then target a face-up monster your opponent controls. Its attack becomes 0, and if it does, its effects are negated. So a quick effect negation is pretty awesome. Makes monsters 0 attack, which is pretty cool. And then, of course, this one's not a quick effect, but during your turn, you can target a monster with 0 attack and destroy it. So that's pretty cool. That means you can negate an effect, and then if it's left on board, you can follow up by just popping it with Gorgonic Guardian's effect. Makes this an awesome card that can't get a lot of play in decks because level 3 rocks are hard to come across, but in Magnet Warriors we have plenty of them, so we are definitely going to play Gorgonic Guardian, usually always the best target, which is why I'm playing 3 of it again. I don't want to banish it off of Extravagance, and so forth. So that's all the extra deck monsters for the level 3 archetype that I actually have sleeved up, and in this build those are really the only ones I go in. Do note, for more optimal builds, you want to make sure you flesh out the rest of your extra deck with probably the best rank 3s or maybe some good link cards. If you want good rank 3s, you want Wind Up Zen Mains, you want Ghost Trick Alucard, Leviathan Dragon, Leviair the Sea Dragon, the Bamboozling Ghost Guy is pretty good. Those are kind of your best rank 3 targets, and definitely ones I will pull out and add to this as I get it. But those are the ones that I just felt needed to be talked about. So that is it for my Magnet Warrior Imperium Magnum deck profile. Like I said, it's just very cool to be able to actually turbo out Imperium Magnum. It definitely is a monster that screams turbo deck. So when Necrofusion came out and having all these cards, I figured I'd have to try it. Now if you're looking for the best version of Magnet Warriors, you're probably going to want something more standard that isn't messing around with Imperium Magnum, and there's definitely probably other videos of that around YouTube. Maybe I'll consider putting a more standard version together and showing it. But Imperium Magnum is a cool monster that I didn't figure gets a lot of love, and so I figured my fresh take on this deck would be like just showing off Imperium Magnum, which is a awesome way to play this deck in a casual setting. With that, that's going to be it for this deck profile. Let me know what you think. Are you a big fan of Magnet Warriors? Are you playing Imperium Magnum, or are you just playing a more standard version? And let me know what you think about the deck and what you're doing with it. I know there's a new card, Epsilon, that just came out that I haven't figured out necessarily yet, or what role it's going to play in this deck. So maybe you'll see another version of this soon, updated with those cards. But in the meantime, thanks for checking it out. I'll catch y'all in the next one.